Hello, I'm Emma Francis. I'm the middle school math teacher, and I do love math, but I figured since it's summer, you guys probably don't want to see a video about math. And I also love baking, so today we're going to make sugar cookies. So we're going to start by setting the oven to 350 degrees. And then we're going to add our butter. So it's 1 cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. And I set this out earlier so it's soft. You want soft butter to make it easier, obviously, to mix up the cookies. And normally the recipe calls for unsalted, but we always use salted and it doesn't affect the flavor. And these are my favorite sugar cookies. My family always makes a bunch every year at Christmas time. So 1 cup of butter, 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, and this is just one batch, which isn't really that big. Usually at Christmas time, my family makes like 3 or 4 batches. I always get powdered sugar everywhere when I do this, but we'll clean up later. There's 1 cup. One half. So I'm just going to mix this a little bit, get it mixed up a little bit before we add the rest of the ingredients. And this is why you need soft butter. If your butter isn't soft, it's going to be pretty difficult to mix up. And this isn't actually even quite soft enough, but we'll make it work. After we get this mixed up a little bit, we're going to add 1 egg. Oh, there's a hair in there. Sorry. 1 egg. Give that a mix. Now the butter's breaking up a little bit more. One egg, a teaspoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of cream of tartar, which is kind of a weird ingredient, but it really gives it a good flavor. It's what makes this recipe unique, I think. I'm not really sure what cream of tartar is, but you find it in the spice section. Teaspoon of cream of tartar, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, but like I said, the recipe calls for unsalted butter, and I use salted. So I'm just going to give it a little pinch of salt. Doesn't need too much more. And then I'm going to mix that up, and then the last ingredient is the flour. So just give this a little mix. So the recipe calls for 2.5 cups of flour, but I never add in. I definitely don't start with the full 2.5 cups because it doesn't always need that much. So I'm going to start with 1. Give it a mix. So it's a pretty thick dough. We have to roll it out and cut it, so it's going to be pretty thick. So there's 1. 2. Gotta get it off my beaters here. Like I said, these are my favorite kind of cookies, but they're a little bit of extra work, so I don't make them that often. Usually just around Christmas time, and once in the summer I'll make them. So we need the dough to be thick enough that we can roll it. So right now it's still a little bit too sticky, so I'm going to add a bit more flour. Probably not the whole 1/2 cup that it's calling for, maybe like 1/4 cup. And then we'll also add flour. We'll put it out on the table, on the counter when we roll it, so that'll get a little more flour worked into the dough. This is looking better. So this is about the right consistency that we're looking for. So now we can get it out, get it rolled out here. So there's some at the bottom of the bowl that didn't get quite mixed in. So some sugar cookie recipes, I'm gonna need to mix this a little bit more. Call for you to chill the dough after you mix it, which sometimes I do. Usually I don't because I'm not patient enough. If you let it chill, it does usually make it easier to roll out. So if you have the time and the patience, it's a good idea to chill it, but I usually just want some cookies, so I don't usually do that. It's good. All right, so I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way and put a little bit of flour down on the counter so the dough doesn't stick. So this is why we don't always have to put all the flour into the dough, because it gets kind of worked in as we go about the rolling process. So it's usually easier not to roll out the entire batch at once, so I'm going to split it in half here. So I have about half my dough. Got the rolling pin. And I'm going to put flour on top of the dough too to help keep it from sticking to the rolling pin. And it still might the first batch is always a little sticky because, like I said, more flour gets added in as we go. So I'm just gonna roll it out here, and how thin you want it is kind of personal preference. I like my sugar cookies kind of thick and fluffy. My mom likes them thin and crispy, so I usually try to go for somewhere in the middle. But you don't want them too thick, or else they won't really bake all the way through. So usually about a half an inch is what they say. Your dough should be about a half inch thick before you cut them. So this is still too thick and started to stick, so I'm just adding a little bit of flour on the top and put it on the rolling pin. Just keep rolling. And then once you get it to the thickness that you want, you can just grab some cookie cutters and cut out your shapes. I haven't decided. I should have done this before I started filming. I haven't decided what shape I'm gonna do. Obviously, at Christmas we do like Christmas trees and Santa. Let's see. We got some stars. I think I'm gonna do stars and hearts. So yeah, so you just wanna kind of get as many cookies out of one batch as you can. So you gotta try to kind of puzzle the shapes close together so you don't have too much dough left over. And when you're doing this, it's best to go just kind of straight down and maybe wiggle it around a little bit. Well, this dough's a little thick in the middle, but those will be my cookies. They'll be nice and fluffy. At Christmas, we always have the Christmas music going in the background while we do this. Ooh, that's not gonna work. So once you have as many cookies out of the dough as you can, put them on a sheet tray. And you want to make sure they're going to puff up a little bit, like I said, so you want to make sure they're not too close together. You don't want them to end up touching while they bake. So, I got 7 on this tray. It just depends how big your shapes are. So once we have all of our shapes on the tray, we'll put them in the oven here. And it says for 6 minutes. I honestly don't even usually set a timer. I just watch them. And once they look kind of golden brown, I take them out. And again, that's personal preference. If you like them crispy, you can leave them in a little bit longer, but it's up to you. So I've gathered up the excess dough back into a ball. I'll add a little bit of leftover dough from the bowl in here, and then just repeat the process till we've used up all of the dough. And I usually save at the end a little bit just to eat because the dough's pretty good too. So yeah, and then after these are in the oven, I will start on the frosting. All right, so we have our cookies here, and one batch made about 45 medium-sized cookies, which sounds like a lot, but they'll go really fast in my house. So now we're just gonna make the frosting, which has 1/3 of a cup of butter. And again, you wanna make sure the butter's soft. One-third of a cup of butter. 3 cups of powdered sugar. So the frosting and the cookies aren't exactly a 1-to-1, like one batch ratio. So one batch of frosting is usually more than enough for one batch of sugar cookies. But you know, you can never have too much frosting, so I always just make the whole batch anyways. 1, 2, 3 cups of powdered sugar. And 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And then the recipe says 2 tablespoons of milk, but kind of similar to the flour in the cookie recipe. You kind of just need to add until you get the right consistency. It might be less than 2.5 tablespoons. It might be less than 2 tablespoons. It might be more. So you just have to add until you get the right consistency. I'm gonna start with 1 tablespoon and then see how it looks. I'm gonna start off slow mixing this, or else you'll get powdered sugar all over the place. So obviously this is not gonna be easy to spread, so we're gonna need more milk here. Add another tablespoon. still a little bit thick. I'm going to add a little bit more milk. And you can test it by actually frosting a cookie and see how it goes. So it's spreading really nicely, and it's always easier to put more frosting on. Makes it easier. So yeah, then you can just frost and decorate. You can color the frosting, add sprinkles, all that fun stuff. Voila. Only 44 more cookies to frost.